Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today, we're focusing on an earnings report that I know many of you are watching closely. Walmart's upcoming release. We've gathered insights from various analyses, really trying to give you a clear picture of what to expect, what to watch for, and, what it all means for this retail giant. We're aiming to pull out the crucial bits of knowledge from the sources out there, just for you.
Yeah, it's definitely a critical moment for a company like Walmart, especially with, well, everything going on with consumer trends right now. And understanding these reports, it's not just about the numbers themselves, is it? It's more about getting a feel for the pulse of the wider economy
Yeah.
and really seeing how shoppers are behaving.
Exactly. Before we dive in, though, just a quick reminder, if you find these discussions valuable, please do remember to subscribe, like, and maybe leave a comment. It honestly really helps us out. And if you feel like supporting the show, you could consider buying us a coffee. The link's usually below. Oh, and also, if there's a specific company you'd like us to look into down the road, just pop it in the comments. We do read those. Okay, so let's get into it. Walmart, their next earnings report. What are the key details right off the bat? When is this happening?
Right, so Walmart is set to report its Q2 2026 earnings. It's coming up before the market opens on August 21st, 2025. That date, it's always a big one for the whole retail sector.
August 21st, got it. And what are analysts thinking? What's the street expecting for this quarter?
The consensus estimate for earnings per share, the EPS, that's sitting at 72 cents. Now, for revenue, there isn't one single explicit consensus number for this specific quarter floating around in the main sources, but generally, analysts seem to be looking for, let's say, modest growth. Think somewhere in the range of maybe $165 billion to $170 billion, which makes sense. It builds on the $165.6 billion they just did last quarter.
Okay.
So kind of a steady climb.
Okay, $165 to $170 billion range, EPS at 0.72 cents. That sets the bar. What about Walmart themselves? What's the official guidance from management?
Good question. Management previously guided for constant currency net sales growth. So ignoring currency swings for a moment of between 3.5%, 4.5% for Q2. But, and this is important, they also flagged an expected negative hit from foreign exchange, about 120 basis points, so 1.2% drag from currencies. They also projected adjusted operating income to grow about 3% in constant currency. Looking back, their prior EPS guidance for Q1 was $11.61. And for the full year, they're targeting EPS somewhere between $2.50 and $2.60. What's kind of interesting this time around, there doesn't seem to be a clear unofficial whisper number, the number traders secretly expect. Sometimes the lack of one points to maybe more uncertainty or just not a strong feeling either way before the report drops.
No strong whisper number. That's interesting in itself. Okay, so we know the expectations. It's always helpful to look back, isn't it? How has Walmart actually done in recent earnings calls, especially thinking about surprises and how the stock reacted right after?
Yeah, looking back is key. And what's quite noticeable is that over the last 4 quarters, Walmart has actually had a pattern of positive EPS surprises. They tend to beat that number. So, for example, Q1 fiscal 26, they reported 61 EPS. That beat the 0.575 consensus. Revenue, though, at $165.6 billion was just a hair under expectations. Then Q4 fiscal 25, EPS was 60 cents, beating the $1.55 consensus, and revenue of $173.4 billion was also a beat. Strong quarter. Q3 fiscal 25 was more in line. EPS was 51 cents, right on the money with the consensus. Where revenue, $160.8 billion, that missed. And going back to Q2 fiscal 25, EPS came in at 61 cents, nicely beating the $1.56 consensus, and revenue of $161.6 billion, also top forecasts.
Okay, so it sounds like a pretty consistent story on the EPS line meeting or beating. You'd normally think, great, stock goes up. But like we always say, the market reaction can be tricky. How did the stock actually trade after those reports? Was it always positive?
Right, you'd think so, but it's been a bit mixed, actually. Quite interesting. After that Q1 report, yeah, there was a small initial pop, but it tended to sort of fizzle out during the trading day. We've seen that pattern a few times recently. No, Q4, that was different. The stock gapped up nicely and actually held on to those gains. That was a stronger reaction. But then you look at Q3 and Q2 before that, the moves were, well, more modest. Often, any initial gains kind of reversed by the close. So it really suggests that even when they beat expectations, especially on EPS, getting that dramatic, sustained jump right after the report hasn't been a given lately.
That's a really important point. It's not just the headline beat or miss, it's the details, the guidance, the underlying health. So let's dig into that. Let's get under the hood. What are the key trends, the metrics within the business that have been driving things? And was there any big news this quarter specifically?
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating when you dig in is the consistent strength in certain areas. Take e-commerce. Growth there has been, frankly, remarkable, over 20% year over year. And not just one quarter, but multiple quarters running. That's huge for a company their size. International sales have also been a bright spot, up 7.8% recently, with places like China and their Flipkart business in India doing particularly well. Gross margins have held pretty stable, which is key in retail, shows they're managing costs and pricing. And operating income is up over 3% year over year. But here's what I find really crucial. Those high-margin businesses, advertising revenue, up an incredible 50% year over year.
50%. Wow.
Yeah. And membership income, like from Walmart plus TAD, up almost 10%.
Wow.
Shows they're successfully diversifying and moving beyond just low-margin retail sales.
That 50% ad growth really jumps out. It's almost like they're becoming a tech or media platform on the side. Is that sustainable? What does that signal? And sticking with this past quarter, were there any major curveballs, like a big acquisition or some major operational hiccup we should know about?
You're right to focus on that ad growth. It is significant. They're leveraging all that shopper data and website traffic, turning their stores and site into, well, an ad platform.
Yeah.
And because it's high margin, it adds a whole new layer to their potential profitability. It's a really smart play. As for major disruptions this quarter, no, nothing major reported. The story continues to be that expansion focus, especially in places like China, the continued strength in e-commerce and memberships, and like you said, that booming advertising business. Those are the key internal narratives right now.
Got it. So strong internal execution and key growth areas. Now, let's zoom out a bit. How does the bigger economic picture play into this for Walmart? I mean, how's the consumer holding up, and how does that specifically affect a value player like Walmart?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What we're seeing is consumer spending is, well, pretty residual overall, especially for essentials, for staple goods. And that resilience is particularly noticeable at discounters like Walmart. People might be pulling back on big-ticket discretionary stuff, but they still need groceries, household items. So even as some sectors soften, Walmart kind of benefits. Inflation, too, while it's easing, it's still around. And that pushes consumers to look for value, maybe trade down from pricier stores. That's Walmart's sweet spot. We do still have those foreign exchange headwinds, though. The strong dollar makes their international earnings look a bit smaller when they bring them back home. That's been improving, but it's still a factor.
Right. The trade down effect definitely helps them. So considering all that, the internal strengths, the consumer picture, the currency effects, how are analysts feeling overall? Have views shifted much recently? More bullish, more cautious?
Analyst commentary seems to be holding steady in a sort of cautious optimism. That's the vibe. The general consensus view calls for, steady results, probably revenue and EPS beats like they've been delivering, but and this is key, most analysts seem to see limited upside for the stock's valuation right now. They expect good performance, just maybe not enough to dramatically push the stock price way higher from here. We haven't seen a big wave of upgrades or downgrades heading into this report, and price targets have been pretty stable too. It suggests they're kind of waiting to see the actual numbers and, more importantly, the forward guidance.
Okay, so analysts are cautiously optimistic, but maybe not expecting fireworks. Let's connect that to the stock itself. How has Walmart stock actually been trading leading up to this? And what's the options market telling us? Is it pricing in a big move?
Well, looking at the chart, Walmart's price action before earnings has been kind of flat. Maybe slightly up, but nothing dramatic. It's actually underperformed some other names in the consumer space recently. So we're definitely not seeing a big pre-earnings run-up, which sometimes happens when expectations are super high. Now, if you look at the options market, the ratio of calls, bets the stock goes up, to puts, bets it goes down, seems fairly balanced, maybe slightly tilted towards calls. So that suggests, a moderate level of optimism. People are leaning slightly positive, but there's no extreme skew, no sign of huge conviction one way or the other.
Balanced to slightly call heavy.
Okay.
So not screaming bullish, not screaming bearish. What kind of actual move is the market pricing in? What does the implied volatility suggest for the post-earnings swing?
Right. The implied volatility from those options contracts is pricing in a potential move, up or down, of about plus or minus 3.5% to 4%, right around the earnings announcement. And what's important to note there is that range, 3.5% to 4%, that's actually pretty much in line with how Walmart stock has historically moved after its earnings reports. So the market seems to be expecting a noticeable move, yes, but a relatively typical one for Walmart, not some massive outlier event.
Okay, 3.54% is the expected neighborhood. That's good context. Now let's game this out a bit. Scenarios. What does the best case scenario look like when those numbers come out? What would really impress the market?
For a really strong bullish case, you'd want to see more than just a beat. You'd need a strong beat and raise. So that means Walmart exceeds both the revenue and the EPS consensus numbers we talked about. And then, critically, they raise their financial forecast, their guidance for the rest of the year, ideally towards the high end of their previous range, or maybe even above it. You'd also want to see gross margins holding steady or even expanding. That shows pricing power. And definitely you'd want to see an acceleration in those key growth areas, e-commerce, advertising. Plus, maybe commentary that those foreign exchange headwinds are easing more than expected. Basically, strong numbers now and strong signals about the future, especially in digital, international, and membership growth. That would be the home run.
Beat and raise, accelerating growth, margin strength. Got it. And the flip side. What would constitute a real disappointment? What triggers the bearish reaction?
Okay, the bearish scenario. That would obviously start with a miss. Missing on either revenue or EPS would be a negative, but potentially even worse than a miss this quarter would be disappointing guidance for the second half of the year, especially looking towards the holidays. Other major red flags. Margin compression. If they say margins are getting squeezed, maybe because they're having to discount heavily, or labor costs are rising faster than expected, that's a big concern. Also, any sign that that strong growth in international or e-commerce is starting to stall out or, heaven forbid, decline, that would raise serious questions about their strategy. And even things like weaker than expected foot traffic in U.S. stores or smaller average basket sizes, or, like we mentioned, if those currency headwinds come back stronger, or if they sound kind of lukewarm about the back-to-school season. Any of those could really weigh on the stock.
That's a great checklist of things to watch for, both good and bad. If you had to boil it down, though, if our listeners could only focus on one key metric in this report, what should it be?
Ooh, just one. That's tough. But I think, for me, it has to be the e-commerce growth rate. It's just so vital. It really tells you how well Walmart is competing in the modern retail landscape, how successfully they're making that massive shift from primarily physical stores to this, omni-channel model. Strong e-commerce numbers show they're adapting, they're capturing that digital growth, and that's absolutely crucial for their long-term future.
E-commerce growth. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's a proxy for their transformation. So bring this all together then, expectations, history, trends, scenarios. What's your overall take? Where do you lean for this report? Maybe a confidence score?
Okay, summing it up. Based on everything we've discussed, my overall leaning right now is probably neutral. If I had to put a confidence score on it, maybe a 6 out of 10 for an inline result, or perhaps a mild beat. Look, Walmart's track record of execution is solid. They're consistent. And their position as a value retailer gives them that defensive quality, which usually means they meet expectations. But, the stock hasn't shown huge momentum going into this, and those broader economic worries, inflation, they're still out there. So that tempers any really strong bullish feeling. It feels more like steady as she goes than a major breakout is likely.
Neutral leaning, 6 out of 10 for inline or mild beat. Okay. So for our listeners thinking about how to play this or just how to interpret it, what are some strategic considerations? Any thoughts for different types of investors?
Sure. For listeners who are generally risk-averse, maybe the simplest approach is just to wait and see. Avoid holding the stock right through the earnings release, or if you do, maybe keep it a small position. Like we said, the downside might be limited because it's defensive, but big upside surprises seem less common lately. Now, for those who are more risk-tolerant and maybe expecting some kind of move, you could look at options, maybe a short-dated strangle or straddle. Those strategies profit if the stock moves significantly in either direction, capturing that implied volatility we talked about. But again, remember, Walmart's moves are often contained, so don't expect miracles. And then for long-term investors, well, historically, if Walmart does have a significant sell-off after earnings, those dips have often been good buying opportunities. They tend to be fairly short-lived. So maybe look to buy on weakness post-report if you believe in the long-term story.
That's really helpful. Different approaches for different folks. So it's been a really thorough look at Walmart's upcoming earnings. It seems clear that while, yeah, consistency is their thing, those growth engines, e-commerce, advertising, those are really the key things to watch for the future direction.
Absolutely. I think this kind of analysis helps us get beyond just the headline EPS number and really try to grasp the strategic direction, the underlying health, especially in what's still a pretty complex economic environment. It's about understanding the why behind the numbers.
Yeah. What really stands out to me from our chat is just how even these massive companies, these retail giants like Walmart, have to constantly adapt. It's never static. How will that relentless focus on value combined with this big push into digital and advertising, how will that really shape Walmart's trajectory? Not just next quarter, but over the next few years. It's a fascinating question, really, for the whole future of retail, something to keep pondering. Okay, well, thank you for tuning in to Investing Talk Podcast. We really hope this analysis helps you navigate the markets with a bit more confidence. We'll be back soon with another detailed look at a company or topic that matters to you. Until next time.